look at that, James. The second we've started the webinar, the doors are open and people are flooding in. Good morning, everybody. Thanks very much for your prompt attendance this morning. I think this shows, James, just how excited people are to kind of hear about the task list and, of course, the new workflow tool that we're going to be running through today. As a way of introduction, I'm Jonathan Stobart. I'm Head of Marketing and Strategic Partnerships here at AM. And James, do you want to introduce yourself?
James Reilly, I'm Product Lead here at AM. I look after the communication between users and development and ensuring that we're building the right things for you guys.
Thanks very much. So today we're going to run through the task list, the revised task list, which I think many users have seen, and we've had a bit of feedback on, and that we've been customizing based on that feedback. And then we're also going to be running through the workflow tool, which has been long awaited, and we've had a few requests from users for the workflow tool. So we're excited to be able to bring that to you today. What I will say, any questions, please use the Q&A box. If we could use the Q&A box instead of the chat box, that would be much appreciated, because chat box can get a bit messy sometimes. So yeah, if you drop any questions in Q&A, we'll pick them up from there. I suppose that's it really from me, James. I'm going to hand over to you, and if you want to whiz us through the task list, that'd be great. Yeah,
absolutely. So yeah, I'll start off by taking you through the new task list. As you probably will have seen, we enabled the new task list for all users. It's still in a beta stage, so we're still taking on feedback. I will share my screen now, but just as a bit of a prerequisite, we'll go through the new task list and then we'll move on to workflow, which should really give a bit of context as to why we changed the task list in the manner that we did. Cool. So you should all have my screen now.
Okay, yeah.
Great. So as I say, this is the new task list. Most of you will be familiar with the old style task list, which was much loved by our users and really is the central backbone of Accountancy Manager, where all of your tasks and workload is organized. The new task list can be controlled using this toggle in the right-hand corner. So once enabled, when we get there, you will have the new view of the task list. So we'll start off with the task card, so the actual view of tasks themselves. Each task has its own card with the top level details as to the task. So your clients, any urgent notes. If there's any missing information on your client, you'll see the red icon, and then, as I say, the top level task details. So what the task name is, who the assignee is, and the value of the given service. We've then got the progress column, which has your latest action, which can be changed by simply clicking on that. A little bit of an improvement as opposed to navigating away from the task, where you can update the latest action for that task. Once the latest action has been updated, the date of the update will be recorded against that task. So you can see there that the latest action was updated yesterday. Great for your audit needs, and if you want to see exactly how long it's been in records received, and how long tasks are taken to turn over. You've also got your progress notes within the progress column, and target date and deadline. The color coding is as it was for the previous tasks. So if it's black, it's overdue. If it's red, it's due today. If it's orange and amber, it's cascading over the next 10 to 30 days, just so that you've got a visual representation as to when the task is due. You can then, as I say, this is the top level information on the task. By clicking on the task card, it will expand to give you all the details that you need with regards to that task. So within the client column, any urgent notes that are against the client can be viewed there. Any missing details, and again, any client notes are there for your reference when you're completing that task. Task breakdowns are still available, and again, sit within the task column, where you can go through and tick off your breakdowns. Now, just as a bit of a heads up, task breakdowns will be being superseded by workflow. And that's workflow will be breaking tasks down into smaller chunks, such as the task breakdown does, but in a much more intuitive way. And we'll come on to that later. So within the progress column, you've also got your progress notes. If you've logged any time there, you'll have the amount of time that's been recorded against that task, and then some top line details on how long the deadline target date are away. So all of your tasks are listed here. On the task card, you've got your actions button. So that button allows you to complete all of the necessary actions against your task. So if you want to go in and edit it, you can also edit your task by clicking on the task name. You can create a new time log, new invoice. You can email the client, upload documents to the client, and again, update progress notes. All very similar to the old task list, but it's just a bit of a facelift. Now, you'll notice that we've got this feedback icon here. This is something that we've recently introduced, and it's a means of us gathering feedback. And please believe me, we listen to the feedback, so I do encourage everybody to use it. One of the pieces of feedback that we received was that in order to start a new time log, it was somewhat cumbersome to click through to the actions and start a new time log. So we've accommodated that by including a quick link to start a new time log on the task list. So all very similar to the old task list. It's just a bit of a facelift and some additional functionality thrown in for you guys. So where it really gets interesting is the sorting and filtering. And this is where we've made the bulk of the improvements to the task list. So you've got your sort options. You can sort by target date, deadline target date, creation date, the date that the records were received, favorited first, whereby it will put all of your favorited tasks to the top of the list, and then order by deadline, A to Z, partner name, manager name. There's a whole host of means of filtering your task list. You can then reverse the sort order by hitting this button here. Now, one new piece of functionality that we've introduced, we'll just wait for the list to load. Is the ability to filter between dates. So if I wanted to look for the tasks that have a deadline between the 5th of July and say the 5th of August, we can filter for all tasks with the given filter options between those dates. You can see that you filtered that there. You can either remove it there or alter your filter by clicking back on the icon right there. So if we remove the filter, it will apply the options, the remaining options. So it's just filtering for myself, but we do have a whole host more filter options. And one of the areas that we've really looked to improve, the old task list, you could only ever filter by one single filter option within a certain category. So you'd be able to filter by one individual member of staff. With the new task list, you can combine multiple filter options. So we can filter across multiple staff, multiple services, and you can really customize the view and the filter that you've got. Once you hit apply options, it will run that and will return all of the tasks that match the given filter options. Now, one thing that's really clever here is that the filter options are applied within the URL. So if you've got a particular view that you regularly use, we'd recommend that you use the bookmarking functionality on your browser, and you could create as many bookmarks for as many different task filters as needed. Probably worth building out a folder so that you can quickly navigate to the various task lists that you use. It's one area of functionality that we will be looking to prioritize against our roadmap, the ability to save searches within the task list. As I say, the feedback widget has been key in the rollout of the new task list, and we've actively been looking at the feedback, actioning the feedback. There's various aspects of the task list that we've responded to. We've reduced the size of the task cards. We've included progress notes in the collapsed view. We've included the time log filter. We are still taking on feedback. So I'd really encourage anybody using the new task list to hit the new the feedback tool, rate the task list, and then you can tell us a little bit more about the task list, and that will come through to myself and the product team where we can pick up and action that feedback. So as I say, that is the new task list. I'd encourage any questions, John?
I was on mute. We'll just jump into some questions that have come in at this stage. So I suppose the first question was just addressing some of the visible appearance of the task list. I think that really you've kind of covered off by James by saying use the feedback tool to kind of give that feedback over to the team, just so we can hear what you guys have got to say about it. And it's something that we are actively always kind of monitoring against and actioning what we hear. The next question was about workflow. So I think we're going to cover that in this next section. So I'm just going to mark that one as that we'll come to. And I suppose there's a few other questions just about one about speed. Speed is something that we're always working on. And so the dev team's always focused on making the system quicker. So it's a continuous improvement in that regards. So there's a couple of questions in regards to how do I columns, because yours looks different to mine, because it's quite a specific user case. Perhaps the support team will come back to you on that afterwards. James, there is a quick one here which says, how do you mark a task as complete? Perhaps you might want to go through that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So the completion button is the tick in the right hand corner. So you hit that. You've got the option to complete it, which will complete it immediately, or complete and notify. Now that gives you a couple of options. You can notify a member of staff. So should Alice need to know that the VAT prep has been completed because she's going to go on to do the submission, you can notify Alice. You can add a note there. When you complete and notify, that will fire through to Alice. She'll get a notification so that she can start on the submission task. This particular client doesn't have an email, but you can also send a task completion email. There's a little toggle that would appear there, and it would fire off an email, or it wouldn't fire it off, it would queue an email to your client to say that you've completed the VAT prep task. Once the task, I'll just go back and complete that. So that task is now complete. You can navigate to your completed tasks list, which again, very similar to the old task list, lists all of the tasks that have been completed. They're grouped by the month that they've been completed in, the completion date, and the member of staff that they've completed, that has completed the task, is listed there. Anything else, John?
There's quite a few questions coming in, but I feel like some are quite specific, really. So I want the support team to probably follow up after today's session. There's one in particular that's wanted to flag that's coming through as an anonymous attendee. It is quite specific. So if you've asked a question and it's not been answered, perhaps I'll get the support team or reach out to the support team. In fact, because obviously if you come up as not anonymous, we can't follow that up. James, at this stage, you want to move on to workflow, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. So workflow, as mentioned, workflow is the next big thing within Accountancy Manager, and it's really going to revolutionise the way that you manage your workload and distribute it across your team. As I said earlier, you've got your task breakdowns that you can break tasks into smaller chunks of work. So we take this prospecting task. So Steve's Industries may have called in and you've assigned the breakdown. You can have breakdown templates. So this may be a templated breakdown that you've assigned to the task. And as the member or members of staff work through the task, they can check off the various breakdown items. Now, as I say, that is just one thing that I wanted to flag before we go on to workflow enablement. So you can enable your workflow from your account settings. Scroll down, Now, this workflow is hidden for all users at present. However, we will be looking to enable for a select handful of accounts, and we'll gradually be rolling out beta for workflow across the majority, well, all of our accounts eventually. Just referring back to the feedback widget, we will be putting out a feedback widget and a number of surveys, and I'd really encourage you, as you get access to workflow, to keep feeding in as to the different ideas and requests that you have for the functionality, because it's going to be an ever developing piece of functionality within Accountancy Manager. So once you've been enabled for beta, and you should receive an email when that has happened, you will find this workflow box within the account settings. If you hit enable workflow, go down, save your settings, and you will receive this modal here. Now you've got a few options. So you've got migrate breakdowns for existing tasks. So that prospecting task that we viewed earlier, that is an existing task with a breakdown. When you enable workflow, task breakdowns will be hidden. By migrating the breakdowns for existing tasks, it will turn that breakdown into a workflow. All of your progress will be retained so that you're not losing your progress and your staff are still up to speed. You can also migrate your task breakdown templates. This will create a workflow template out of your task breakdown templates. We'll come on to that very shortly. Now, our recommended settings are to disable target dates. I know that a lot of people love target dates. However, as we go on, you'll come to see why we'd recommend you disable target dates. It's a bit date overload. You've got your deadline. Workflows have individual deadlines within the workflow. So we'd really recommend that you disable target dates. You can always enable them. All of your settings will be retained, but we'd strongly suggest that you trial disabling target dates in the first instance while you get set up, and probably, yeah, as you move forward, you may or may not need to tweak that. So if we go next, so we've opted to migrate our breakdown templates. So here you can choose which breakdown templates you want to migrate. So we'll take your KYC, we'll take your prospecting workflow, that's the one that was on the task that we viewed earlier, payroll workflow, and let's take them all, why not? So now we'll save the settings. And what it's doing in the background now is creating workflow templates off your task breakdowns. So here, well, once you've enabled, it will direct you to your workflow manager. That can be navigated to via tasks and workflow manager. Here you can view all of your workflow templates. You can have draft templates and archive templates. This list of templates is where you can begin to manage and tweak and edit all of the finer details. We'll come on to the reason for duplicating, but you can duplicate your templates, or you can archive your templates, or you can jump in and edit a template. So let's take the personal tax return. In Blue Peter fashion, this is one I made earlier. You can see that the workflow template has a name, it's got a description, and then we break the workflow into multiple groups. Now, each group can have an individual deadline with individual subtasks within them, and each subtask can be assigned to a different member of staff. So in this instance, Alice may be the member of staff that is responsible for sending out the checklist to the clients. So you can say that Alice should be the one to do that there. And also, yeah, the checklist and other info, it would be Alice's responsibility to confirm that they've been received. Now we've got some variable options here. So the task assignee, the task may be assigned to different individuals across the team. So you may want specific workflow items to be assigned to the task assignee, the client manager, or indeed somebody specific within the practice. So you've really got the freedom to assign different aspects of the workflow to different members of staff. There's the option to drag and drop different subtasks. So should something sit within another group, or indeed you may want to add a new group, which may be, let's call it client checks. We'll bring it up there and right to the top. and maybe we move these subtasks to the client checks group. We'll remove the empty one, and there we have 3 different groups, all with different deadlines. So you might need your client checks to go out 30 days before deadline, your prep might need to be completed by 15 days before deadline, and your submission 2 days before deadline. You can then publish and view your tasks, view your workflows. Creating a workflow works in a very similar manner, whereby you can create your groups, add your subtasks, all off the fly. But by migrating over your breakdown templates, we've really given you a starting point. So we'll take your KYC and risk assessment. That was just one long list of breakdown items, and it's been thrown into a workflow template. But you could then create a new group and begin to rearrange the subtasks into the group. So you've got all of your breakdown templates there for ease of bringing it all together. Cool. So what do workflows look like against tasks? And as I say, the change in the task list was a prerequisite for introducing workflow. We couldn't have accommodated it within the previous view. So you may remember that this task for Steve's Industries had a workflow, had a breakdown against it with a number of items that were completed. When we migrated over that workflow, the workflow was created and the status was retained against each of those task breakdown steps, just in the format of a workflow. So you could view workflow, and we'll come on to that slightly later. So let's take the VAT submission job. We don't have a workflow against this task. So when we expand it, we've got the option to create a workflow. We can either select from a template. So if we take our VAT return template, we can view what that will look like. And that has been allocated over to the task assignee. Let's see somewhere, but everything's pre-populated with the relevant dates. Alternatively, you can create a new workflow where you can create everything from scratch, your groups, your subtasks. And this could be great if you've created a new task on the fly and just creating a quick workflow there. If we go back, we'll select the VAT return workflow and create. So this is the workflow now. You can mark your tasks as done. So blue means it's in progress, grey means it's not yet due. You can mark it as in progress. And this means that individual members of staff, I appreciate this one is only assigned to myself, but every member of staff could have different subtasks within that workflow. As you check it off, you can see the progress bar is complete. So you've got a visual indication as to how much progress has been made through that particular group of the subtasks. Once we complete that subtasks, it will move on to the next group within the workflow. If you're working on a job on the fly, you've got the option to edit a workflow. So if you needed to add an additional subtask in, you can do so there, remove subtasks, reassign subtasks, change the status, or change the due date of a particular group. Cool, so that's a task list and how they look within task list. Hopefully by getting this view, you understand as to how and why we've made the changes to the task list that we have. So as I say, you can expand your task to see the next group that's at hand. If you want to see future groups, you can click on to view the full workflow. And that also covers off the migration of existing task breakdowns, that we've retained the status of each breakdown step. Now what we'll do, we'll return to Workflow Manager, and this is where the tool gets, it's powerful enough in itself, but this is where we've really put some backbone into the functionality. So as I say, you've got your workflow templates, you've got the ability to duplicate a template, and you may let's call it Steve's VAT return, accept and proceed. It's created a duplicate template for Steve's VAT return there. Remember that, we'll come back to it. You've got settings. Now this is your workflow manager settings. And here you have the configuration of all of your tasks. So your account service, when you enable it for a self-assessment client, your self-assessment prep task will be created. Whereas your private limited company, you've got your accounts prep and your company's house submission. So here you've got all of your services and all of the corresponding tasks that are created off the back of them. Now, say we take, where should we go? Let's go to VAT returns. So we've created the VAT return workflow. That workflow has both the prep and the submission subtasks with their own individual deadlines. We can disable the VAT prep task and select VAT return for the VAT submission. As I say, there's a group that accommodates the VAT prep subtasks within that task. We could then go to self-assessment tax return and assign the personal tax return workflow there. Review changes. So we've turned off VAT preparation tasks. So if you want to remove your existing tasks and we've applied workflow to your VAT submission tasks, if you then want to do that to your existing tasks, you can do there. So you've got the option to only apply to new tasks that are made from this point forward or to existing tasks. At this point, when you update your workflow settings, it will go off and apply them to your tasks. So if we hit refresh on the task list, that should come through, and we'll just give it 1 second. Now, one thing while that's loaded, we'll go back to the workflow manager templates, and we've got Steve's VAT return here. So there may be some different steps that are required for individual clients. When we get there, we may, so we don't need to complete that task, we don't need to complete that task, and then we can publish the workflow. Now, Steve's VAT return isn't assigned to any of these tasks via settings. Right. So we'll go through and we can see that we removed the VAT prep task. That VAT prep task has been removed for BT, and we have assigned the VAT workflow to that task. It has gone off and applied it to that task. Now that we've applied it via the settings, every time a VAT submission task is created, this workflow will be assigned to it. So as ever, you can go through, complete the task, view workflow, and you can say all of your different members of staff will have their relevant subtasks assigned to them. Now, if you've got a particular client that has, say, I know that I've gone over to BT, a client that has a different requirement when working through that job, you can visit their client file and there is a workflow tab. When you navigate to this workflow tab, it will display the various settings that have been enabled. So VAT returns, we've got the VAT submission task, and it's got the VAT return template. So maybe we need to apply Steve's VAT return for this particular client. You can set that here on a client level. You can do that across all tasks, all services that have been enabled for that client. You can review changes. Again, if you want to update the existing VAT submission task to Steve's VAT return, you can do so here. And again, we removed another task there. We'll update that setting. When we hit refresh, it should be Steve's VAT return under the BT workflow. You've also got the option within the client settings to reset your client workflow settings, and this would revert it back to the default settings as set within your workflow manager. So if we go back to BT Limited, as you can see, we previously had 3 subtasks. This is evidently Steve's VAT workflow. There you are, Steve's VAT return workflow. It's been altered within the workflow manager, set at a client level, and is now reflected within that particular client's task for your staff members to go through and complete the relevant steps within it. So say if there's an incorrect workflow been incorrectly applied to a task, you've got the option to remove it. And again, you can reapply a different workflow template across the board, or create an entirely new workflow from scratch. I think that's everything, Jonathan. So are there any questions that have been sent in by the guys?
There's been 1 or 2, James. And I think I suppose the big one that's been asked a couple of times now is when is workflow going to be enabled to people?
So we will be enabling within the next week or so. We'll be rolling it out incrementally. As I say, we will be looking to obtain as much user feedback and take on board various different insights that you can provide. We'll be looking to roll out to beta testers initially, probably next week, beginning of next week, a handful of users, but we'll be taking applications to test workflow via a Google form that will be sent out either in the chat box or after this this webinar.
It's in the chat box now. So that's I've just shared a Google form. If you want to take part in the beta testing, please do drop your name, practice, and email address onto that Google form, and then I'll pass that over to James at the conclusion of this call. So another question that we've had in a couple of times, James, is about subtasks. When subtasks are assigned to a member of the team, will that then appear on their task list if they was to filter the task list by that particular staff member?
Yeah, absolutely. So that task will, so despite this task being assigned to Alice, so we can do that right now. If we go into view workflow, we'll edit the workflow, assign one over to James, update workflow. So despite this task being assigned to Alice, if we go in and search for tasks for James, apply options, that task should appear at the top of my task list. There we are. It's Alice's task. We're searching only for James, but the task is appearing because there is this particular subtask that is assigned to myself. You can then also filter by workflow and task deadline, and this combines the next workflow deadline with the task deadline. So if there's an incomplete workflow, the workflow deadline will take priority. If the workflow is complete or the task doesn't have a deadline, it will base it on the task deadline. So the most appropriate piece of work that is due next will appear at the top of your task list.
Thank you. So we've had just a comment saying, can we not just have one task per job? I suppose, of course you can. You don't have to use the workflow manager, do you?
No, not at all. You've still got one task here. You've got your CIS period end assigned to James. There's no workflow against it. You've got one task per job.
Perfect. Here's a good one. Does updating the workflow template on the fly affect the global template or only the workflow on that one particular job?
Say that again for me, John.
When you're updating the workflow template on the fly, does it affect the global template or does it just affect that one particular client?
No, so if you're updating the workflow on the fly, which I believe you're referring to updating this, it will only update this template. Now, if you do update a workflow on the fly and then you go ahead and update a template, it won't be reflected on the workflow that you've updated. So this workflow was initially related to the VAT return workflow template. By updating it, it breaks that link because it's a unique workflow. So any updates to the template will no longer be reflected on this job.
So we've had a question about getting a task list within each task. I assume that means perhaps setting up multiple tasks within a task. I think we've kind of covered that off really to be able to show how to add new tasks into a workflow template. We also had a question asked about how to add in a new group into a workflow template. James, will perhaps just quickly just go through that again, just to show the guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we go to button, go to templates and create new workflow templates, all of the views are very similar. So you've got your initial group here. When you're creating a workflow template, you can drop in your group name, your subtask name. You can either add a new subtask, this will add it to this particular group, or you can create a new group and again add subtasks to that group and make all the necessary changes maybe 10 months before the deadline, whatever you need to do in order to accommodate that to how you look to function.
We've been asked a couple of times now about how subtasks appear for members of the team. For instance, if one subtask is dependent on another being completed, how does that subsequent subtask then appear?
Cool. So currently they appear based on a group basis in chronological order. As it stands, we don't have logic in there to block groups, but we do. That is something that's in the pipeline. There's a whole load of enhancements that we have on our wish list as to what we would look to do next. This is really where we'd be looking for user input as to what to do. We will likely have another feedback button within the workflow manager section, and that will be unique to the task list feedback button, so that by using that, you can provide feedback directly around workflow. Throw in your feature requests, throw in your wants and needs, good ideas. Tell us if there's anything you don't like, but keep it fairly light. I hope you love it. There's loads of functionality and there's loads more that we can do with this this piece of work. We're not going to stop development on workflow. Workflow is going to be central to Accountancy Manager moving forward. So where you've got integrations, we're going to have steps that can direct you over to the relevant integration. If you've got forms that need to be submitted, if you need to upload documents to a client file, there's various different steps that, as I say, are on our wish list, but really we'll be looking to prioritize that with you guys. What I'd probably encourage everybody to do, not immediately, but once we've started to roll out workflow in beta, the roadmap, so accountancymanager.co.uk/roadmap, I will create a tab that is specific to workflow, probably at the front, and you can submit ideas, where there's been new ideas submitted, we'll look for users to vote on them, and this is a really powerful tool to allow us to understand what's important for you guys.
We've had a couple of questions coming in about recurring tasks. So if you had perhaps an annual accounts task, for instance, and you assign it a particular workflow, once you've completed that task and then the recurring task appears again the following year, will the workflow be automatically attached to that service?
Yes, and I know that was a great annoyance with the previous tasks, that you couldn't apply breakdowns on a recurring basis, that you'd have to go in and manually assign it. Yeah, the workflow manager settings allow you to assign a workflow to a recurring task. So every time that task, if it's you say an annual accounts task, or if it's an office-based task, it might be the office close down or the office cleaning. You can really customize your task list and generate tasks for whatever you need and create workflows that really are representative.
Just had a question come in from Sarah. Are we able to delete tasks if they are no longer needed, so they did not need to be completed? Just want to run through that one.
You can, yes. So we'll navigate back to the task list. So we'll take the prospecting workflow. When you expand it, tasks may or may not be deletable. So tasks that are created on the fly are deletable. If a task has a date has changed within the client file so that it doesn't align with the task, there will be a large delete button in the progress list. So tasks that can be deleted because they've been created on the fly, there's a delete button in the expanded view. If there's a task that can be deleted because it's no longer matching up to the period end, it will be very obvious that that task is deletable because there's a large button within the progress column.
Standard workflow templates, James. Are we going to be providing particular breakdowns for users to follow, or is that going to be on them to kind of create their own templates?
We would love to be able to do that, but again, lending back to the feedback, we want you guys to really input into that. Longer term, well, probably mid-term, we'd look to have a workflow template library whereby we've got standard templates that you guys can jump on, pick and choose what works for you, and even build some sort of community whereby you can submit your workflows to go into the template library. And this great AM community that we've got can start bouncing off each other and throwing ideas into the pot to really streamline your work streams.
Can you search workflows, James?
At present, you can't. It's a very good point, because you might have a fair few workflows. Again, throw it into the box. We'll get it up onto the product roadmap, and we will continue to develop the functionality. As I say, the feature will be rolled out in beta initially. While it's in beta, we're subject to change. We're really receptive to what you guys want to see and what you guys need out of the functionality. So please do keep feeding in.
We are getting to the end of the questions now. There's a couple outstanding that perhaps the support team are going to be able to follow up with. Also, the question coming. Thanks, John. We've got your request to be in the beta program. If you do want to be in the beta program, I would encourage you to fill out the Google form that I've just dropped into the chat box again. So to check that out. James, one for you though. There's a question saying, when you complete a task, does it then update the workflow? Just want to run through that again, please.
Cool. Yeah. So if you attempt to complete a task that has an incomplete workflow against it, it will warn you that the workflow hasn't been completed. Obviously, if you then want to go ahead and complete the task, it will force those workflow. Well, you can opt to complete those workflow steps. If you've attempted to complete it by accident, you can then cancel that. It will just give you that warning that there may be steps that are incomplete against that workflow.
We had a question saying, how do status changes to the workflow appear in the client's timeline? Do they at all?
So currently it's only the parent task that appears on the client timeline. There is an audit log via the back end that we'll be looking to expose via the front end. So there will be a log as to what date and time James completed Alice's subtask. Currently, it's not visible to you guys, but we are collecting that data so that should there be the need and the request from you guys to make that visible, we'll reach out.
There's a point of clarity here, saying, did we say that you will be able to create internal workflows that aren't assigned to the clients? I suppose the beauty of the workflow tool is that it's completely customizable, really, isn't it, James?
Yeah, absolutely. You can create a task that could be office closed down, as I say. Could be office closed down. You can select your workflow template. You might have, any workflow template. You could have any number of steps under any sort of configuration. When you create that task, the task won't be assigned to a client, but it will have that workflow assigned to the relevant people. So you can start to use your task list to monitor and action work streams and workload outside of your normal day-to-day services for your clients.
We've had a question saying, can you add not applicable to the options for workflow? Again, they're all completely customizable fields, so you can put in what you want, really. So once a job is completed, does it create the job for the next time? Again, recurring tasks such as VAT returns.
Yeah. Recurring tasks, you can assign a workflow to it, and when it's created, the same workflow template will be generated against it.
James, can you just show the URL of the roadmap again, please, for people to be able to give feedback?
So it's accountancymanager.co.uk// roadmap, which is just there. As I say, so it's a really great tool for us to get your thoughts and feelings on different features. You can click on individual cards, you can read what we're thinking, how important it is it nice to have, is it critical, and you can provide a bit more information around what, so we're talking time logs here, what you'd like to see with regards to your time log types. As I say, we'll have a specific workflow tab to really hone down on what you guys would like to see within that. And as I say, you can always submit ideas that don't appear on the board using the submit idea button up there.
So Kimberly's just going to point a clarity here. By non-applicable, she's saying rather than to do in progress, can there be a non-applicable option?
Currently, there's not. We've got the three statuses. Again, going back to we can, we have the flexibility to make whatever changes are needed and requested by our users. So as I say, keep feeding them in and make sure that you do use the feedback tools. Sometimes we have surveys that will pop up at the bottom. And please do utilize those, because it's really your way of having a voice with what's developed next.
Excellent. There are a couple of outstanding questions. I think I'm going to ask the support team to kind of come back to these ones, to be honest with you, just because I think we will be able to get to a more accurate answer than communicating via the Q&A box. James, I suppose thanks very much for showing people through the new workflow tool and giving a good overview on the task list. Is there anything that you wanted to cover off just before we wrap up the session today?
I don't think so. Just thank you for everyone for attending. Really hope that you like the new tool. I really do believe that it's going to revolutionise the way that you use Accountancy Manager and you utilise your task list. And I hope you enjoyed the demo. Excellent.
Thanks everyone again for attending. We're looking forward to seeing your feedback, and please do let us know your thoughts. I will be sharing a recording of today's session with everybody that registered for the session. So look out for that and feel free to share that with your colleagues as you see fit. Apart from that, thank you very much, everybody. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Bye now.